Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. This session is Understanding College Admissions for STEM Majors with our speaker, Kim Lund from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. My name is Linda Schwartz from the Mountain View High School Counseling Department. Thank you to the MVLA Foundation for support of our College and Career Center. Kim, thank you for joining us. I'll hand it over to you. I'll be here to help with the Q&A. If we have time at the end, we'll help highlight a few questions that you can answer out loud at the end.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Hi, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got a little PowerPoint to go with this. Yes, I think that's the layout that I want. Share, okay. And let's do this as a slideshow from the first slide. So let's go, buddy. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for confirming, Linda. All right, again, this is the Countdown to College and Understanding College Admissions for STEM Majors. But first, a little introduction, a little about me and about the school that I currently recruit for. My name is Kim Lund, as Linda said. I once upon a time was a STEM student myself. I have a degree in applied mathematics from Penn State. I spent some time active duty military, some time in the corporate world, but for the last 10 years, I've been working in higher education. For 4 of those years as a STEM instructor, 3 years working in student success departments, and the last 3 years I've been recruiting for a STEM-focused university. Let me tell you a little bit about Rose-Hulman. We are a small private STEM university, STEM focused, only 18 majors, and we're located about an hour outside of Indianapolis. For the last 26 straight years, we have been ranked the #1 undergraduate engineering school in this country, which means we are the best darn little engineering school you've never heard of. We've been ranked in the top 1% for return on investment. We're a top 10 school for best school internships. And we are one of the few top tier or tier 1 STEM focused schools that remains test optional. So I just want to share a little bit about me and my school so that you understand where I'm coming from when I talk to you about the admissions process for STEM focused schools. To start, let's talk about some definitions about the admissions process. Schools use all different kinds of ways or strategies for admissions, and they use some terms, and we throw these out very comfortably because we're very familiar with them, but a lot of parents and students are not. So let's talk about what early action means. Early action schools, typically most schools have both cycles, an early cycle and a regular decision cycle. But why might you choose to apply early action? Most schools will encourage it. Early action means there's no downside. Your student's going to apply early. They're going to hear their admissions decision early. They're not going to have to commit until right around that May 1st deadline. Typically no downside to early action. Some people think maybe it's harder to get in when you apply in the early cycle, but oftentimes universities have not filled their classes yet. In the early cycle, regular decision cycle classes are starting to fill, and those requirements or what we look to admit suddenly become a little bit tighter. So usually it's not more difficult to get into a school in the early action window. There are some schools out there that are early decision. Sounds a lot like early action, but it's a bit different. An early decision admissions process means that you can only apply to that one school. It's restricted. You apply to them, nobody else. You wait to hear your admissions decision, and if you are admitted, you're expected to go there. If you don't, there's usually a financial penalty involved. If you don't get in, then you're welcome to apply to all those other schools on your list. Regular admission, most schools do an early window and a regular window, and the regular admission cycles deadlines typically are after the first of the year. The other thing you just need to be familiar with is the rolling admission. I went to Penn State. Penn State's a rolling admission school. That means as long as you hit their minimum requirements, you're going to be admitted until their class fills. So the key to getting into a rolling admission school is to simply apply early. The earlier, the better. One final thing families need to be aware of is schools that do this kind of game. Students can be directly admitted to the College of Engineering or the College of Science, or they can be admitted to the university without being directly admitted to that engineering school. If you are not directly admitted to a school, but you're admitted to the university, that means you are now a freshman at that school who is applying again to get into that engineering school and hoping that the numbers work out and that you get in. So just be aware. Usually this is larger schools. I'm a small school, so this isn't what we do. But a lot of larger schools, to control their numbers, will admit people to the university, but not necessarily to the college that the student desires. And so there's a second application during their freshman year. As an example, I use Rose-Hulman as my example. We are an early action school. We encourage our students to apply early. Our deadline is November 1st. Students hear from us by December 15th. Students do not have to commit to us till May 1st. When Rose-Hulman admits a student to Rose-Hulman, we actually admit our students to every single one of our majors. Students at Rose-Hulman are never freshmen applying to get into an engineering school or a math or science program. We admit our students to everything. So it's worth kind of doing a few minutes of research on all schools students are applying to just to understand how that school operates. In addition to researching how the admission cycle works, I suggest making a little matrix, having your students spend about 10 minutes on every school that they want to apply to and research those application deadlines, the admissions requirements, because maybe we're all STEM schools, but our admission requirements look different. Some schools still have foreign language requirements. Rose-Hulman does not. We're so STEM focused, we do not require our students take foreign language. Different schools require different numbers of letters of recommendation. So as your kids start to look, spend that 10 minutes and research on those websites. If a student can't answer these questions in about 10 minutes by looking at a school's website, a chat box is going to come open, send them an email. If a school can't get back to your student within 48 hours, it's probably not a school worth applying to anyway. As an example, as I mentioned before, Rose-Hulman, we're early action. Those are our deadlines. Regular decision cycle for us, submissions February 1st, our students here by March or middle of March. We do have an unusual science requirement. Our science requirement is very different from a typical STEM school. Since we admit our students to every one of our majors, we require students have a full year of biology, physics, and chemistry to include students who want to study computer science. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, but that's how we have to operate because we admit our students for all of our majors. We only require one letter of recommendation. So that's just how Rose-Hulman operates. If you or your student are looking to go into a STEM field, engineering, math, or science, it's important that they start thinking about math and that they really like it. A top tier or a tier 1 engineering school is going to require students take 4 years of math minimum through pre-calculus. At most schools, calculus is required if it's a top tier school. We only require through pre-calc. We don't hold it against our rural kids who don't have access to calculus classes. I do have a pet peeve though. I see a lot of students apply to Rose-Hulman who will take pre-calculus as a junior and then turn around as a senior and take finite math or AP statistics. One is probability, the other statistics. As an admissions counselor, I wonder why someone's applying to my engineering school and avoiding calculus. Sometimes I recognize that maybe that calc class is full and that student couldn't get into it. And it would be worth noting that on the application. That said, there'll be a student at your school who will say, hey, I did what I could to get calculus and that class was full and I couldn't do it. So that's why I took AP stats. But I guarantee you there's another student at the same school who's writing me a letter that reads a little bit different. I couldn't get calculus at my school, but I wanted it to be as prepared as I could be to get into your engineering school. So I found it someplace else. And it's going to be on a different transcript, probably my local community college or something like that. So it's just something to make sure that if your kids are really serious about math, science, or engineering, that they're on a calculus track. Science is a fun one. If your student is interested in studying engineering, it's very nice for them to take physics while they're still in high school. Lots of physics options out there. Kids can take a regular high school physics class. Kids now have access. AP has lots of options here. AP has what they call AP Physics. If that's what it's called, it's algebra-based physics. That's a high school physics class. Even if that student gets a 4 or 5 on that AP exam and it's transferable to that college, Rose-Hulman takes 4s and 5s. Some schools only take 5s on AP exams, but we'll take 4s and 5s. But we're not interested in that AP Physics algebra-based class because that's not college level work, not at my school. AP does offer a calculus-based physics class, AP Physics C. There's 2 of them, mechanical and electromagnetic. Students take those classes, score 4s and 5s in those exams. Those are going to transfer for college credit at a school like Rose-Hulman and at a lot of other engineering schools. There are a lot of students out there who are taking classes through Project Lead the Way and other similar engineering pathways. These classes are great to help students prepare for college engineering curriculum. It shows that student, if they're doing this in high school and they want to continue that in college, they know what they're getting into, they have some passion for it. We feel like this is really helping them prepare for college. I get asked all the time by students, how much college credit am I going to get for my Project Lead the Way courses? And the answer at my school is zero. And at most Tier 1 engineering and math and science schools, the answer is going to be zero. Those courses are worth taking. They're going to help prepare students for a solid engineering curriculum, but they're not necessarily college level work. So I just want to kind of throw that out there so that parents are aware. All right, let's talk about the application. You're applying to a STEM school. Let's talk about some things I need you to do on your application to really enhance your opportunity to get into these amazing schools. First and foremost, think about this out, and I'm thinking about the common application. I think most students do use the common application because it's convenient. I can apply to multiple schools with just one app. And so the way it's laid out, after you do your personal information, there's a chance to list the activities you've done in high school or your student has done in high school. Show us your passion for STEM. The way students spend their time when they're not doing homework tells us a lot about what they're genuinely passionate about. And if a student's applying to a science, engineering, or math school program, it's important that we can see that passion for STEM and what students do in their spare time. On the Common App, you'll be prompted to say, hey, did I have a leadership role or was I a member? You'll have the chance to let us know how many years you participated in this activity, how many hours per week you spent on it. It's important to spend some time and get close. We're not going to come back and go, oh my gosh, you were off by 30 minutes a week on this. Nothing like that. But just give us a general idea about how much time a student has spent on these activities. If a student had a leadership position, name the position and let us know what that student accomplished, having been a leader in that position. Be sure to have your students include self-directed activities. I can't tell you how many students applied to my computer science program and they weren't in a club. They didn't have a coding club at their school, but they were so passionate about video games. They wanted to create their own video games and they taught themselves Java or Python or both on the side. And they spent hours a week doing that for years. That's worth mentioning on that application. Sometimes we have students apply to my automotive engineering program, and they're going to talk to me about how they spent time with their grandpa in that garage, repairing tractor equipment, rebuilding vintage cars, etc. Sometimes kids think this is just a fun hobby and it's not worth including, but this shows us more passion for STEM than most of the clubs that those kids might join at school. Be sure to include camps you have attended, outside jobs. Sometimes students are contributing to that household income, and between school and an outside job, there isn't time to do a whole lot of STEM-related activities. But I can see the number of hours the students spend on that job, and I can see that they are both resilient and responsible. That can make up for some of those STEM projects that I had hoped to see. A lot of students do independent research. Be sure to include that as well. I like to tell students, because they always say to me, well, should I include this? Should I include that? There are no demerits for writing something on that application that I didn't care about. I'm not going to take points away because someone spent the time and told me about some activity that didn't make a difference to me. But if I don't know about it, I can't award points for it. And at Rose-Hulman, not only is that common application going to let you know whether or not you're admitted, but we use that application to determine your merit award. And a lot of schools do that. So just think about everything you can possibly include. It might mean some dollars for you, not only just getting in, but it could help save you some college money. All right, let's talk about the essay. You're applying to a STEM school. You have an opportunity to write an essay. Sometimes some schools require additional essays. My school only requires one. We know our students don't like to write a supplemental essay. We consider that a barrier to applying to college, right? So we only have the one essay. Everyone's going to require at least one. Use that essay as an opportunity to let us, admissions counselor, get to know the student, you better. Feel free to show us your personality. I love it when a student makes me laugh. I even get a kick when their humor is kind of snarky, because I know that that means they're probably a good fit at Rose-Hulman. You know, that total smart kid sense of humor. That essay is an opportunity for a student to tell me something about themselves that I didn't learn about them already in their list of activities. I do like to caution students, I love a good setback story. We're looking for resilience in our students. So a good setback story is great. As long as you overcame the setback, you learn something from it, from the whole experience, and you have take the moment to tell me how you're going to apply those learnings to college. If you can't fill in all of those blanks, that setback story isn't as strong as it would be as if you can answer the rest of those questions. The letter recommendation. Some schools do require more than one. We only require one. It's important that students know. No one's going to read that application until it's complete. And if a school required more than one letter of recommendation and we only sent one, it's never going to be read. So just be aware of that. Students ask me all the time, should I have a STEM teacher write that letter of recommendation? And if that STEM teacher is the teacher who knows you best, by all means, have that STEM teacher do it. But sometimes the student just develops a better relationship with a non-STEM teacher. They might have been someone who went with them on some mission trip and knows aspects about their personality that their classroom teachers just don't know. The best letters of recommendation are written by people who know students well, who are going to tell me something about that student that that student didn't think to tell me about themselves. At my school, we accept letters of recommendations from teachers or counselors. You guys are in California, and California has a new law out there. I don't know if this applies to the entire state, but it applies to a lot of the schools where kids apply to Rose-Hulman from. And that is, counselors really aren't even allowed to write letters of recommendation anymore. But not every student got the word. So this is what happens sometimes with counselors. They will fill out a form, like, a student's going to say, here's the email address of my recommender, and it's their school counselor. That counselor receives that email. They have a form, they fill it out. On that form, they're going to check a box and says, I am not actually sending a letter. What happens is in Common App, it's going to look like a letter was sent. And in my database portal that the student will be seeing on their end, it's going to look like a letter was sent. And we're not going to know that one was not sent until I'm reading that application and I see that form. And now I'm sending an email to that student. I'm saying, hey, I don't actually have a letter of recommendation. Can you go to a teacher and have one sent? Typically, this happens because counselors' caseloads sometimes are just too big and they just don't know the students well enough. So I always tell my students applying, plan to send 2 letters, but make sure your first letter is from a teacher. You can use your counselor as a backup. That's usually the best way to go. Here's a big don't. It's a major pet peeve. Do not tell your counselor or your recommender that your dream is to go to West Point and then apply to 10 different schools. And that recommender has now written this beautiful essay to West Point about how the student has dreamed about going to West Point. And recruiters from MIT, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, Purdue University, Caltech are reading about how much the student actually wanted to go to West Point. Not necessarily going to help you get more money on that application once you're admitted. Just going to share that. It happens more often than you would think. All right, so in summary of what I've talked about so far, when it comes time to reply to college in general, whether it's STEM or not, it's important to spend about 10 minutes doing a little research on each school that you're applying to, understand that school's type of admission process, the admissions deadlines, and the course requirements. I can't tell you how many people apply to Rose-Hulman. I think it's because it's so easy to add schools to Common App, but now we're spending $65 to submit that application, and you don't have a plan to take physics before you graduate, you will never be admitted to Rose-Hulman. But if you had taken a few minutes to research that first, you could have saved yourself the $65, or because we're juniors right now, we could have put ourselves on a path to meet that requirement in time. So now we're admissible to all those schools. So that's important. Take the right courses to be admitted. A school has those requirements because they know that this is what kids need to be successful at their school. So take the right courses, not just to be admitted, but to be prepared for the program that you're about to enter. Show us your passion for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in your application. Take advantage of every aspect of it, from your essay to your letter recommender to the list of activities. Let us see how excited you are about STEM. Remember that the best high-quality letters of recommendation come from the people who know you best. And be sure in your essay and with your letter of recommenders, because you're not going to get to read those recommendation letters unless that teacher just shares it with you on the side, just make sure that they know you're applying to multiple universities with that one letter so that they don't mention one school and have it be read by 10 other schools. Any questions?
I have a question. Um,
Can I
can, can,
can I stop just for 1 second? If you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A and then we can go from there.
Okay. I'm looking down at the.
And while we're waiting, I was just gonna say for anyone we in the Low South Mountain View Los Altos district, our counseling team still provides letters
Good.
as
It's
counselors.
important to
I was
know
like,
because
I am unfamiliar with this, so
there are
we go
so
through
many
it.
California schools where I read, I can't
Oh,
send a letter.
okay.
My
Well, I was like, I will just make sure
okay.
everybody knows we're still providing that. All right. Any questions for us? You can type in the Q&A. And Kim, thanks for talking a lot about physics. I feel like I'm pushing physics a lot, and that just helps me as a counselor,
Mhm.
because that's really important. But it tends to be when people just put off either or are waiting on us. So I'm very appreciative.
No, you're very welcome. If someone's interested in engineering, physics is just kind of a baseline. Math is the language of science and engineering, and then physics is just that baseline problem-solving class that's just fundamental. All right. So for a student who's taken 3 years of advanced math, including calculus, yes, it would definitely be acceptable to take AP stats for that fourth year. Definitely. I never mind seeing AP stats or finite math on someone's transcript as long as they have also at least taken 1 year of calculus. I am totally good with that. Can a student in 12th grade still take biology, chemistry, and physics while when he applies, the course hasn't finished? And that's a great question. And the answer is yes. Oftentimes, students are applying in their senior year and they're taking one or two of those required science classes. The Common App will allow students to list the classes they are currently taking. And if we see that physics and that chemistry that's missing, because most kids take biology either in 8th or 9th grade, we just check it on off. We anticipate the student will complete those, and we can still admit those students while they're working on completing those courses. Yes. I love this question. Is it better to get an A in regular calculus versus a B in AP calculus? Um, I would say it's 6.5 dozen the other. The way my school does it is we re-weight the math and science and English classes, interestingly enough. And so an A in a regular calculus counts the same GPA-wise as a B in AP calculus. I'd probably rather see a student challenge themselves and get a B than to take the slightly easier class to get the A. I'd rather know that kids are getting used to being challenged. How about grades on these AP math courses? We like to see A's and B's. Would a student who has taken rigorous STEM courses with straight A's, but his outside class passion is music, ever be admitted to Rose Holman? Yes, I cannot tell you how common it is for musicians, cross-country runners, and swimmers to really be interested in engineering. And yes, interestingly enough, at Rose Holman, a student could even minor in music. Our kids do 3 quarters a year instead of 2 semesters, and there's a chance to perform those instruments every single quarter you're a student at Rose Holman. So yes, if I'm seeing a lot of that rigorous course curriculum, I'm assuming they're passionate about math and science. I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm excited to see them be interested in music because they'll have a lot of friends doing that with them at Rose Holman. Is there a big difference? Let's talk about AP Calculus AB versus AP Calculus BC. Here's the difference. AB calculus counts as Calculus 1. BC calculus counts as Calculus 1 and Calculus 2. So doing the BC calculus, you have done your first two calculus classes. Doing AB, you've done your first calculus class. And you're welcome. Oh, does competitive summer camp and college program help? Yes. Please tell me about your summer programs that you go to. We offer one ourselves called Operation Catapult, but nothing screams passion for STEM more than spending 12 days of your summer on some university somewhere in the country doing engineering, science, and math projects for a couple of weeks. So I definitely love it when students do those camps. When do you think is a good time for students to do campus tours? That's a great question. A lot of times juniors want to do it because we're picking schools we want to apply to. But my students from California don't typically want to fly out to Indiana until they've become an admitted student. So, and once you're admitted at Rose-Hulman, and this is true for a lot of schools, once you're an admitted student, you now have access to do a lot of extra things on your tour. So I would say senior year, maybe right after you get admitted. So you apply to me in November, you're admitted in December. So now we're talking January, February. You come out to Rose-Hulman, this is true for a lot of schools. You're going to get your admissions presentation, you're going to get your campus tour, but you're also going to have a chance to sit in a class, meet with a professor, talk to the performing arts department, talk to a coach, etc. So there are a lot more things you can do to help you make that final college decision if you do your visit post being admitted. But some kids really want to learn more about the admissions process prior to applying. That can be done through virtual meetings and virtual visits as well without making that flight. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, oh, good. You're welcome.
All right, any more questions? That was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, those were great questions. I'm glad you thought to ask them all. Those were
Yeah,
really
very
excellent.
good.
But junior completes AP Calc AB senior year. Should they still take BC Calc and not AP Stats, correct? I'm good either way. I'm honestly good either way. Personally, I'm happy to see calculus done and that a student did not avoid calculus. BC Calculus is probably better preparation for an engineering program than the AP Stats. But even my school, students are required to take a stats class by the time they graduate. Usually it's a higher level stats class than something that would be like an AP Stats class might transfer to us as a tech elective, but they're still going to take a stats class at a 200 or 300 level at my school. I would prefer to see the BC calculus, but the stats class is fine as long as 1 year of calculus has been taken, and that's what AB calculus would do. Okay, Rose-Hulman, we are still test optional. We are one of the few tier 1 engineering schools where we are still test optional. So we don't require it. I will say most students have always continued to take those tests and have continued to proudly share those scores with us. Having a strong test score can potentially up a merit offer. So I recommend getting the test, but we are not going to hold it against a student that doesn't have access to a test. And that's kind of happening in certain parts of the country. Is there a preference for AP Stats versus multivariable calculus? When I'm reading your application and you're applying to Rose-Hulman, if I had to choose between AP Stats and multivariable calculus, I would recommend multivariable calculus. But either would be perfectly acceptable because multivariable calculus is Calc 3. If you're taking that, then I know you've taken Calc 1 and Calc 2 and you've been successful. But there are quite a few students applying to engineering schools who have taken all the way through Calc 3, and a handful are taking linear algebra as well. And sometimes I see differential equations on there. At a more competitive school, the more calculus you take, the better off you are. So I would lean toward the calculus if I had the option. Do your odds of getting into college higher when test scores are submitted? Oh, that's a good question. The odds can get higher when you submit strong test scores. Sometimes students are submitting very not so strong test scores, and that doesn't necessarily make the odds greater or less for them getting into school. I will say the majority of top tier engineering schools are test required anymore. For Rose-Hulman, your odds of getting in are not affected by those test scores, but a strong test, slightly, I say this, a strong test score can offset that embarrassing B or C, really it's the C's, that a student got in their freshman math class. I'm starting to twitch over that embarrassing C freshman year, but I see a 700 math SAT score, I'm over it. And I see A's and B's in all future math classes, I'm over it. So actually the odds are better. If you have a couple embarrassing C's in STEM classes, a strong SAT score can offset that for Rose-Hulman.
We're gonna do two more. I'm gonna take a quick one, and then Kim will do one more, and then we're gonna finish tonight. I have a question that since schedules were due, is it possible to make a change? At my site, we can still make changes at Mountain View. For Los Altos, I would just say reach out to your counselors tomorrow. I'm sure they are aware that you could have heard something, and they will give you some directions for any changes. And then, Kim, there's one more question about what was a strong score, I believe.
Yep. So if a student has a below a 600 math SAT score, don't share it. Just don't share it. When students are starting to get into those upper 600s on that math SAT, that's 670 or higher, we're starting to see that as a strong score. Average math SAT scores for students who attend Rose-Hulman, they range from 690 to 720, depending on how many years of data you look back at. So I hope that helps.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. I want to honor your time commitment. We're so glad you joined us. This was incredibly valuable. So thank you very much. And
Oh,
have a
you're
good
so
night,
welcome.
everybody.
Yep. Nice to meet everybody. Good night.
Thank you very much.
you.